How's it going, everyone? This is Draoi with another damn level. Today we're going to be wrapping up the Arcane Surge build that I introduced about a week ago. The final step of this is the ranged rotation that we're going to have to use when you're forced out of melee range with a couple bosses, maybe even some PvP. I've run into that situation a couple times in PvP. This rotation isn't near as complex as like the melee rotation, but it also doesn't do as much damage. This rotation tends to average between 10 and 12k damage, which is okay, but over the amount of time that it takes to finish this rotation compared to how much damage the melee rotation puts out in such a short amount of time, this definitely puts you at a disadvantage if you're stuck at range. That being said, it doesn't take you completely out of the game. You can still deal very consistent damage, which, like in some boss fights, is way more valuable than someone that goes down immediately but can deal, 20k damage in a couple seconds, as opposed to you that can deal 10 to 12k damage over probably 2 to 3 times the time they did, but you don't go down near as easily or at all. This is my experience in dungeons and fractals and things like that. So with this rotation, we focus on using arcane power to begin with, and that's what gives us the most damage output with things like Phoenix and Dragon's Tooth. One of the downsides to this, however, is the fact that we're not in melee range, which means things like Ring of Fire, Earthquake with Churning Earth, and a Arcane Wave, we can't use that really to give us as many stacks of might as we do in the melee rotation. We'll use Ring of Fire and Earthquake within this rotation to get a couple stacks of might, but it's not going to be near as much as we would get with the melee rotation. So to walk you through this rotation, we start in Fire, just like we do with the melee rotation, and we're going to start with an Arcane Power. So we're going to go Arcane Power, and then we're going to hit with a Phoenix and a Dragon's Tooth. So Arcane Power will make these two crit without much of a problem. Some significant damage with another 1k burning on top of that, which isn't too bad. Then we're going to lay down a Ring of Fire. Now our Ring of Fire isn't going to hit our target at range, however we're going to use it to generate some stacks of might with Earthquake. So in full, Arcane Power, Dragon's Tooth, Phoenix, Ring of Fire, then we're going to rotate to Earth. Inside Earth, we're going to do an Earthquake inside of our Ring of Fire. That's how we're going to get those stacks of might. Now I've noticed this target golem doesn't always put me in combat, so I'm not sure if we'll get the stack generation. We should, but I don't know if we will. I've noticed it bug out a couple times. From here, we're going to Dust Devil, and then we're going to Rock Barrier. Dust Devil is damage reduction with blindness, and then we get toughness from Rock Barrier, so a little bit of survivability. From there, we're going to go into Air. Now when we're in combat and we switch to air, it's going to cause a free Lightning Strike, which is going to use one of our Arcane Power charges, which will bring us down to 1 charge left. We're going to use that charge for a Lightning Strike, because it's the heaviest hitting skill we have that does a single hit on our bar right now. So it's going to be a Lightning Strike, then we're going to do Arc Lightning and Blinding Flash. That's all we're going to use, because we're limited to range skills at this point. Which means the last 2 skills on our bar most of the time, because it's a dagger, aren't going to be really useful. From there, we're going to do an Arcane Wave to refresh Arcane Lightning and apply some vulnerability, which is always what we're looking for, more damage output, and that helps everyone, not just yourself. From here, we're going to go into Water. We're going to lay down a Shatter Stone, which more vulnerability and some more damage, and then we're going to do a Frost Aura, which is damage reduction and a little bit of CC if they hit you. Not a whole lot going on here. Then we're going to rotate back to Fire for a stack of might and a single Dragon's Tooth. From here, it just starts over again. Earth, then we're going to do a Dust Devil. Now Rock Barrier becomes Hurl, so we're going to do a Hurl. From there, Lightning, our first 3 skills because they're ranged. It doesn't particularly matter what order it is in the second time because your Arcane Power isn't active. Your Water here, next we'll go into Water, then another Shatter Stone, because it has, I believe, it's a 2-second cooldown. Now your aura, on the other hand, will be on cooldown. Take a drink real quick. And because this is on cooldown here, this is an open slot. You can fit whatever you think you need in here, whether it be an arcane shield if you're taking on some heavy damage, maybe some healing. I suggest Cleansing Wave quite a lot, especially in cramped dungeons or PvP, because that helps you and everyone else around you, because it removes a condition as well. So I tend to put Cleansing Wave in there the most. But Arcane Shield is perfectly fine. Whatever you feel you need to do to keep everything running and obviously to not die. So from here, we rotate back into fire. And then we do 2 consecutive Flamestrikes for a little bit of damage, because at that point we're going to have like 2.5 seconds left on the cooldown for Arcane Power. At that point, this entire thing just starts over again. And that's it. That's the entire ranged rotation. So again, its damage output is pretty minimal. Well, I guess not minimal, but more than half of what your melee rotation does with the melee burst and the melee cooldown. But it doesn't take you out of the game. You can still certainly hold your own, and you're a little more durable than like a crit cannon or a build like that. So you can hold your own, but you're not the best at ranged. But this is a melee-centric build. It was built for melee. It was optimized for melee. This is a situation which you will find yourself in, I'm sure, at some point, where you're kind of limited to range, but it won't happen near as much as one might think. You're able to get into melee pretty quickly with things like Ride the Lightning is a great way to get into melee, especially in PvP. So most of the time you can get in there. There's a couple boss fights that force you into ranged, but those shouldn't be too much of a problem. So I'll show you this entire rotation here and what it looks like. It's not near as complicated or convoluted, some might say, as the melee, but it also doesn't do near as much damage. So we're going to start out with a Arcane Power and kick it off, and I'll do the full rotation. Of course I messed it up.
Getting hotter. Water. Here come the flames.
So there you go. That's the entire rotation. Again, it does a fair amount of damage, just not as much as your melee. And of course, I had kind of a brain lock there when I hit my air attunement. But the rotation was still right. All the skills, everything was in the right order. And that's it. That is the range rotation for the Arcane Surge build. Not near as complex or convoluted as some of the other rotations we have with this build. I've been using this rotation again in PvP and in PvE, and it's worked fine. I've had no complaints. It's been pretty killer. I've been able to do quite a lot with it. It's very versatile. And that's it. That is all there is to this build. This is the 3rd video, and it's the final video for this build. I'm going to be bringing my Ice Witch build to video here pretty soon. I think that's going to be the next one. I have my Molten Elementalist as well that I hope to bring to video. We'll see which one makes it first. I gotta take them out for some more test runs in dungeons and PvP before I sit down and make sure it's a build worth actually bringing to you guys, because, you know, if it's terrible, obviously, what's the point? So, that's it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.